Cops of Reddit, what's the saddest thing a criminal has ever said? Ex-cop. Speaking to a juvenile in the cells with a buttload of warrants for stealing cars and armed robberies. Told me the only way he could get toys is if he stole them, and his parents would never help him with his homework but showed him what to say to get free McDonald's and how to avoid getting caught shoplifting. Some kids have no hope and are just going to end up in the system. My last year of teaching, the principal told me to give up on a 10-year-old kid because he would just end up in a gang and die. That broke me. We're just teaching these kids how to stock shelves at Target. What principal of a poor AF high school in CT, surrounded by wealthy ones, told me in regard to hopes for the students, in the context of college generally not being on the radar, whereas college prep was the norm everywhere else. Was my assigned mentor during my education program. Worked a case where a group of lifelong friends got into an argument, resulting in the death of one of them at a birthday. I don't think it will be surprising to anyone that a lot of folks don't typically speak with law enforcement, let alone aid in an active homicide investigation. It's something I didn't fully understand at the time, but was a starting point for me. Having conversations with the best friend of the deceased and a distant relative that was an inadvertent witness. Both had negative interactions with law enforcement in the past, and it was some of the most heartbreaking work I've ever done to build rapport, having to convince someone that you actually give a shit about their friend that was killed, and that talking about it would actually help. The whole investigation was one of the bleakest things I've ever been a part of. Just senseless violence, deserved mistrust, and a court case that was an absolute travesty. We got our man in the end, but it was fairly hollow. These men had, effectively, sent one of their lifelong friends to prison for killing another. The defense for the accused was one of the most incompetent proceedings I've ever been a part of, to the point that the defense was basically making a case for the prosecution in his closing remarks. There's just not a lot of feel-good stories in police work. For every baby taken out of a hot-locked car, stop leaving your kids in cars, there were 10 homicides, ODs, or domestic violence we had to pick up the pieces of. Having to charge a person for a crime, when you investigated them as a child victim years before. His mother had that same expression of despair each time. I believe this might be the third or fourth comment I've ever made. I'm medically retired after 12 years on the job. My worst day was also my best day. I had arrested a grandfather on warrants, but knew that he had been molesting his 3-year-old granddaughter to the point both of her private parts were the same opening. I knew that we didn't have enough evidence to convict him, so I needed a written confession. I had learned in a crimes against persons class that pedos want validation from other adults, so I knew what I had to do, as bad as I didn't want to do it. I had to convince this human piece of excrement that I understood and agreed that his granddaughter had been seducing him for over a year and that she wanted it. After all, why would she come sit in his lap wearing her thin, little nightgown if she didn't? The interview lasted about an hour and I had to leave the room several times to either vomit or throw and kick stuff around the patrol room. It worked. He gave a written statement and I used it to get a 20+ year conviction. He'll never be able to hurt her again. Worst day equals best day. Not a cop but was married to one who worked the graveyard shift. He'd get home at 7 a.m. and crawl into bed, and if I woke up, I'd ask how his night went. His precinct had the highest murder rate in our city, so he regularly saw some pretty awful things and more gut-crushing abject poverty situations than you can imagine. So it's early morning on Thanksgiving Day. He gets home, showers, crawls into bed, and I ask how work was. A bunch of teenagers got hold of a gun and were playing Russian roulette. One lost, the other teens scatter. One gets home and tells his mom, who calls the police. Cops get to the address and a sister comes to the door. The mother and sister are home but slept through the gunshot in their own apartment. They didn't believe a shooting happened and didn't want to let the cops in. They finally convince them, and the sister walks them to the back bedroom and is like, "Nothing here, see?" and opens the door to a room that is now essentially painted with her brother's brains. I can't imagine what it was like for any single human involved in this situation. The friends who witnessed it happen, the sister walking in on it, or the officers arriving at the scene having to surprise a family with the news of someone's horrific death that they slept through. How do you even get to the point where you play Russian roulette with your friends? What's the big idea? I think it was teen boys trying to be hard and egging each other on, kind of thing. Probably drugs or alcohol involved. Bad decision making for sure, but these kids lived in a really hopeless place. This same shit happened to some mutual acquaintances in Ciudad Juarez. I still remember one specific guy because I'm pretty sure he stole my best friend's iPod at a party. The dude didn't have a drug problem and came from a relatively well-off family. It was nothing but posturing and bravado that did one of them in. Not a cop, but a year ago South Africa was hit by political unrest and riots. A lot of stores were looted, and people were walking off with multiple TVs, appliances, etc. Some citizen journalist was out on the streets, stopping looters, and interviewing them. It's winter, it's dark, and suddenly this little kid appears, holding a single bag. All alone. Couldn't have been more than 8. The citizen journalist stops him, and demands to see what's in the bag. He opens it up. 1 t-shirt. 1 jersey. 1 pair of pants. 1 pair of shoes. A 3-pack of underwear. This little kid had followed a group of adults into a chaotic situation and taken what he needed, and only what he needed. I can't watch the clip without sobbing. The interviewer sent the kid off with his little bag of one single, looted outfit. The final shot is of this tiny little thing, walking into the darkness, barefoot and alone. It was absolutely heartbreaking. I remember that clip. Really heartbreaking. And then all the infrastructure just burned to the ground. So many senseless deaths. Security using live rounds because they ran out of rubber bullets. Police and army nowhere to be found until it was too late. Absolute chaos. Don't tell me our chief of hat police had no idea this was coming? They should be in jail with Zuma. I nicked a guy for attempted murder once. I had met him before a few times, usually when he was a suspect. He just said, "Even now, you're still the closest thing I've got to a proper friend." I kinda feel bad for the guy. Same. He wasn't a nasty person to talk with, he was just very easily angered and easily manipulated. It's a dangerous combination. I am not a police officer, but for a time I volunteered to implement self-improvement talks within a juvenile correctional facility in Mexico. In Mexico you are considered an adult until you are 18, so everyone inside this correctional facility is under 18. The story that most impacted me, and I still think about it from time to time, was told to me by a 16-year-old boy. He was in jail for homicide. He was a thin boy, dark-skinned, not very tall but not short either, very polite. He didn't say many bad words and his friends described him as very hard-working and very friendly. What I am describing to you is so that you feel a little what I felt at that moment. He told me that his father was an alcoholic, and when he drank he beat him and his brothers and sisters apart from practically raping his mother. This situation was getting worse because it was more and more constant the days that his father arrived drunk. The worst was when he started mixing drugs with alcohol. In his words, they were the worst moments of his life, the most violent thing I've ever seen. This story is how I remember it. It may not be 100% true, but it is how I remember him telling it to me. The question I asked him is, "How did you end up here?" And he didn't speak for a few minutes and I saw how tears fell, but after gathering courage he told me the following. "One day my father arrived drunk as usual, and hit us as usual, but something clicked in my head when I heard the screams of my little brothers and my mom. I had to do something. I took a knife from the kitchen and waited for him to fall asleep. I remember that I didn't have to wait long. I stood in front of him and watched him for a few seconds. I swallowed the fear and with all my strength I put the knife in his neck. He got up before he could stab him again, but he bled out very quickly and didn't last much longer. At that moment everyone got up from their beds and saw what happened, and my mom was crying and yelling at me why. At the same time she hugged me and we cried together until the police arrived. My mother turned herself in to the police saying that she was the one who killed her husband, but I told them the truth. They locked us both up, but when they did the investigation they released my mother. And that's how I ended up here. This story haunts me to this day. Sometimes reality is stranger than fiction. Many years ago, I saw a documentary about women who had murdered their partners. One woman spoke of the violence she had endured for many, many years, including being raped regularly. One night she begged the man to just please leave her alone. She had kids in the house, and was caring for her 12-year-old niece. The man, referring to the niece, said, "I bet she takes it up though." And she snapped and grabbed a knife and stabbed him. She said that abusing her was one thing, but there was no way he was touching that kid. Every person I spoke to about this all had the same response. When she said she killed him, we all thought, good one, not my usual response to murder. She never told anyone this story, because she was so ashamed, so she was sentenced severely. Once the documentary screened, many lawyers offered to help her, and they appealed her sentence and she was released. This was probably 30 years ago, and I still remember her name. I was a cop for almost 10 years in my 20s. My point of view shifted a lot during that time. There wasn't a specific thing that one person said I recall, but there was a moment that made me feel more sad than any other. I was chasing a guy who had broken into an old lady's house in his neighborhood. He seemed to get a kick out of running from us. He was young and incredibly athletic, despite addiction issues and I'm sure other health issues, and could get away almost every time if we didn't corner him indoors. He had punched a cop earlier in the night to get away from him, and we had him in an apartment in one of the local projects. I knew a fight was coming no matter what we did to de-escalate, and I was ready to scrap. Sure enough, he refused to follow any commands and tried to power through my partner and me, and we fought him. When his mother came to the hospital to check on him, I put together that he was the same kid we'd met maybe 8 years earlier. He was around 12. His parents were hammered and high fighting in the back patio of their apartment, as they did every first weekend of the month, GovCheck's weekend. He and his younger sister were inside watching some very rated R movie. We talked that night about how those two were absolutely not going to have a chance at fulfilling lives or happy families. I immediately felt sad and terrible for being excited and so willing to fight. I never looked at him the same. It changed the way I handled lots of situations. I'm a lawyer and I'm in the process of evicting a lady with a lot of problems. When we first met, I offered her $3,000 to voluntarily vacate. She refused. At the meeting, I met her young 6-year-old daughter. Daughter held my hand walking down the hallway at the courthouse, and as I was conferring with mom trying to settle, she just quietly sat and smiled at me. I remembered thinking, how could this crazy lady have such a well-behaved, adorable daughter? We had our final trial last week. It didn't go well for mom. House had no electricity, mom was caught stealing power, so power company shut the house down, which is part of why she quit paying rent, and that was mom's last-ditch defense. She failed to tell the judge the lack of electricity was her fault, an oversight I corrected. When the judge learned she'd spent 2 years in a house with no power with a young daughter, he instructed his clerk to call CPS and start an immediate child abuse investigation. Sitting here typing this, I'm not sure whether that kid would be in better shape with her mom or in a foster home. I see some other mental health professionals chiming in, so I'll give mine as well. I work inpatient adolescent and children. I had this one girl who was about 16. Most actively suicidal child I've ever seen. Her parents used to sell her to their drug dealers from about 2 to 3 years old. She blocked most of it out, but suffered from horrible PTSD and would wake often throughout the night in full-blown panic attacks from flashback dreams. She's literally wake up screaming, trying to strangle herself with her blanket or grabbing anything in arm's reach to stab or choke herself with. Any loud noise would send her spiraling out of control. Often she didn't remember these episodes after she was medicated and calmed. She's the only patient I've ever had that required 2 sitters at all times, even when she was sleeping. She has serious physical, psychological and developmental problems from the years of physical, drug and SA that she insured from her parents and their scumbag dealers. The poor baby will never be able to live any semblance of a normal life outside of a mental hospital. In some ways, I wonder whether keeping her alive is worse. She is one of the very few patients I've had that I just know one day she will be successful in an attempt. It's so heartbreaking. There's only so much that can be done, and she most likely won't ever qualify for long-term hospitalization for life. I had another patient that was in her early 20s and was diagnosed with a violent form of schizophrenia. She did get accepted to the state hospital, but that's a waiting game for a bed to open. We had to discharge her to her family to wait it out. We couldn't justify keeping her as an acute care facility. She was extremely violent and seriously psychotic. Every day she was injuring staff, some pretty severely. While she was waiting for a bed in the state hospital, she ended up jumping off of the big bridge here in the city. Another one of the many heartbreaking cases I've seen. I'm in dispatch, so I don't usually hear what the suspects say, but I do hear what the victims say, especially in the moment when they're still in the heat of it. One night the phones hit hard at about 2:30 a.m., and let me tell you, nothing good happens after 2 a.m. I take 1, reports of gunfire. Times are like that, and some people don't have constructive things to do other than pop off some rounds. As long as there's no property damage and loss of life, everything's good, right? I take another, same report, add it to the pile, take down their location to help triangulate. Then I take a third, barely a whisper. Nobody ever says it would be so hot. I calm her as much as I can, but shock is one hell of a drug. I get her location, let my coworkers know it's go time, and loop in EMS for life-saving instructions. She was asleep, in her bed, and caught 3 bullets in the lower torso. I think she made it, but I'm just dispatch, I don't always get closure. I worked for a man who hired me to paint his home. He took me to the backyard and pointed to his drywall patio ceiling. There was a hole. He said him and his son were standing talking, and a bullet came down through it and killed his son instantly. It was a really odd feeling of just someone being turned off entirely without any real intent behind it. Not like a natural disaster or anything, but just the actions of someone indirectly doing that and never knowing or caring. Edit, this blew up like hell. I don't know what to tell all the Reddit gun experts. The dude's son has been dead for some time with a bullet. Celebratory gunfire deaths are a real thing, it can happen. Improbable doesn't mean impossible. I worked 20 years in corporate security. One of my responsibilities was internal theft investigations. I've literally completed thousands of investigations over the years. An investigation I completed in Baltimore was probably the saddest. The store had a missing deposit. Approximately $15,000 was gone. It never made it to the bank. The likely suspects were the 4 managers who all had access to the safe. So that was a good place to start. I talked to the first 3 and felt pretty strong that none of them were involved. The last, assistant manager I needed to talk to arrived. The first thing she did was go to the bathroom and get sick. The store manager kind of laughed. She said she's been getting sick often. We're pretty sure she's pregnant. I interview her and she ends up admitting to stealing the missing deposit. She also admits to previously stealing an additional $10,000 in cash and merchandise since she started working for us. She then talks about her drug addiction. She was always clean until about 6 months ago when her boyfriend talked her into trying heroin, just once, he said. A few months later she was a complete addict. I could tell from her physical appearance she wasn't in a good place. She asked if I wanted to see something. She then showed me a few photos of just a year ago, when she was a high school cheerleader. She was very attractive and I couldn't believe it was the same girl standing in front of me. She said she had good grades and never did any drugs at all before 6 months ago. Her boyfriend who got her hooked had left her. So now she went to the worst crime, drug-ridden area in Baltimore and bought the drugs on her own. She said she had another addict friend who would help look after her in such a tough area. Just seeing how she had declined physically and gotten herself in a very dark place, it was very sad to see. I told her I would agree to reduce charges and diversion as long as she was getting help. I wanted to see proof that she gets into rehab and some form of counseling within the next couple months. If I came back in 2 months and she couldn't provide proof to me, she would be charged with a grand theft felony. I was able to follow up with her once, but that was it. I wish I was confident she somehow was able to turn things around and get her life together. That this story has a happy ending, but I'm not. Not a cop, but while I was in a holding cell while they were running my warrants, they brought in a junkie. He was a 17-year-old kid. They asked where he was born and he said Kyrgyzstan, then told them that his 14-year-old mother left him with a family member who brought him to the US. He had cysts and track marks all over his arms. When they asked him why he would do that to himself, he just deadpan looked at the officers and said, "I was dead a long time ago." The look on the cops' faces was indescribable. They both looked like something died inside of them. I sat there for 2 hours before being released. All that guy did was cry the whole time. Addicts are people that crave love and comfort and can't find it in the world. It absolutely sucks to see them subjected to the penalty system rather than given access to the help they need and deserve. Cop here. You hear a lot of awfully sad things in conversation with all kinds of people, but with impoverished folks, sometimes it's not even an inherently sad sentence until you look at the context. From that gaze, everything that's said can take on a tone of sadness. And it's not pity, it's just a sadness that is striking to new officers. Once you realize not everyone lives how you live, and they're totally okay with it. Food, shelter, water. You can start to help them within the parameters that exist. And beyond that, there's a lot of anger and resentment that perpetuates the multi-generational cycle of abuse, poverty, etc. In that same vein, there's a lot of striking one-liners. 2 farmer brothers arguing, that one there is daft as hell, slightly comedic. A Mennonite family at a tragic child death on the farm, it's God's will, blunt, but raw emotion. And lastly, anyone at the scene of a fatal collision of a loved one just wailing incoherently. Saddest noise you'll ever hear. Not a cop, but served as an infantryman in Afghan in 2011 to 2012. Was on patrol pretty much doing cop work sometimes. We'd go door to door or compound to compound and our lieutenant would talk to locals with our translator. During one of the meetings I was inside working as a sort of guard for my lieutenant. The guy he was talking to came up positive for gun trace residue and was a confirmed Taliban in the eye scanner thing we had. When my lieutenant questioned him before we detained him, he told my lieutenant that he didn't want to fight us, but if he didn't, the Taliban would kill his family. I was 18 to 19 and my lieutenant was 24 to 25, now I'm 29 and I realized that war was all fucked. And now the Taliban is the official government of Afghanistan. Can't imagine how all of you who fought in that war feel about that. It's hard to explain. I'm from the East Coast and 30 some odd people died in 9/11 from my hometown, including my neighbor. I spent my entire childhood and youth afraid I'd miss the war. I wanted to do my part. I enlisted when I was 17 with my parents' consent. I graduated high school on a Friday and shipped to Paris Island the following Monday. By December I was in Afghanistan. My unit had around 14 guys killed in action and 100 plus wounded, mostly amputees. I got my Purple Heart when I was shot in the shoulder and the round came through my neck and came out of my cheek. I came home and nobody seemed to really give a shit I went to war. I got a ton of "thank you for your services," but I think most Americans say it because it makes them feel better. Anyone from my hometown just knows me as that guy who got shot in Iraq, or maybe Afghanistan. I was shot in Afghanistan, never been to Iraq, completely different war. Most Americans couldn't really name a single battle or town we fought in. I was in the Sangin River Valley and it was probably more comparable to Vietnam than the typical desert the average American pictures. We didn't drive around in vehicles, we walked for kilometers every day seeking the Taliban or stepping on IEDs, mostly IEDs. When we did engage the Taliban, they usually DD'd before we could kill them. It felt like insanity losing a guy to an IED, but not being able to engage the enemy that planted it. I gave my youth to that country, lost friends, bled for it. My high school girlfriend broke my heart when I went to war and she went to college and broke up with me. When I got out of the Marines and moved back home, my only friend was my dog. Thankfully Hess still around, but Hess 14 now. I couldn't really relate to my friends who had just graduated college and moved home because to them, the war was not important or really any aspect of their lives. I didn't like bars or clubs because the crowds would make me feel uneasy, so I slowly stopped being invited out because I'd never go. I felt really lost leaving the service. Over a decade later I realized that was a war we'd never win, 1,000 years or 1 year, as soon as we left it was going to go to shit. I don't talk about Afghanistan because a lot of people don't even realize some guys actually fought a war there. I was in over 50 firefights, some within 50 meters, most 500 plus meters. Some lasted minutes, others lasted hours. All of them felt like a lifetime. Nobody can really relate. It's a part of my life that will always stay vivid to me, but also feels like a dream that never happened. Watching those poor kids die last summer made me sick to my stomach. All for nothing. I feel pride in having served, done my part, etc., but in hindsight I went there for my country, but only fought for my friends. I don't have PTSD or anything. I don't have nightmares. I just feel like I gave my youth for nothing. I ended up going to college on my GI Bill and coming back into the Marines as an officer. I had a hard time being a civilian and readjusting to real life. I worked a job in a Fortune 100 company for a year after college and was very unhappy. In a way, the military is now my safety bubble because I can be with friends who get me. Sorry for such a long reply, venting on an anonymous account feels somewhat therapeutic for me. Not a cop, but I see a lot of other people chiming in. Former foster parent, Portland area. I had permanent placements, and did emergency placements. I'm going to preface, I treated my foster kids like they were my blood. Still do, years later. Dig deep into my post history for context. Foster kids have it rough. The foster system is bleak, for the kids and for people like me. My case manager would refuse me respite constantly, telling me I should ask my rich mommy for help. My mother isn't rich, and we are barely on speaking terms. The emergency placements, EPs, were tough. If you are unfamiliar with that, it's immediate, temporary placement for kids recently removed from their homes. Sometimes, removed from other foster homes. Before you take the EP, the caseworker involved would often speak to you, briefly explain the situation, ask if you were comfortable and able to handle the kids. Sometimes they'd email you a little dossier. They were never accurate, omitted a lot of important details. I never turned a kid down though, no matter what. From babies to teenagers, I did what I could. Meth babies were the hardest, emotionally. One particular placement still gets me. I got a call one weekend for an EP. Foster mom felt threatened by the kid's hostile behavior. He had RAD, reactive attachment disorder, and blew up on her. He ended up in a hospital near me, she refused to take him back. Caseworker tells me they'll organize medical transport, and to sit tight until he arrives. It's 4 p.m, I order pizza. 6 p.m, still no kid. Call the caseworker, she's gone home for the day. I speak to her supervisor, who pulls up the file no medical transport has been requested. I offer to just go get the kid, the hospital is close. She refuses, cites some arbitrary guidelines. Supervisor tells me she'll arrange it, but I get her number just in case. 10 p.m. Still nothing. I finally get a hold of the supervisor again after hours of calling, who tells me they forgot. They'll get right on it though. Bullshit. I offer to go pick the kid up, or I'll complain to her boss about this mess. She relents. I call the hospital to confirm with them, make sure everything's good, and go. Kid's decent, 13, almost as tall as me, strong build but sweet. Very polite. As we're leaving, a nurse stops me. You can't forget his medicine, she said, he'll die without it. At no point did anyone mention this to me. Years later, and this still infuriates me. If not for that nurse, I wouldn't have known, and I would have had a huge medical emergency on my hands. Fast forward a bit, because this is becoming a novel. That night goes well, kid's super well behaved, no issues. The next morning, we're having breakfast and he stops talking to the other kids or looks at me. He asks how long he's staying. I tell him I don't know, because it's true. EPs can last days, weeks, months. They are usually abruptly placed in new homes. There's no set time frame. I could tell that upset him though. He stood up and said, "Okay, I'm going to leave then." So, big thing about foster care and especially EPs, you can't let them wander off. If you can, you restrain them. Butterfly hold, as an example. But we were told in extreme cases to sit on the kids. Hand to God, if you couldn't restrain them, you called the caseworker, or the police. I ended up putting him in a butterfly hold, had one of the kids speed dial the caseworker for me, the caseworker who simply called the police. He started sobbing, and talking. We ended up sitting on my couch talking until the police arrived. Out of my control at this point, this poor kid just wanted someone, anyone, to give enough of a fuck about him to stick around. But no one ever did. He blamed himself, said he knew he was worthless. He asked me why nobody was capable of loving him, asked me if it was because he was black. As they were loading him up into an ambulance, totally unnecessary, but this was the caseworker's call at this point, he begged me to stay in touch. I told him I would, and he was welcome back anytime. I did try. I tried constantly, emailing or calling his caseworker, but it was always someone new. They said it was inappropriate, or, it would not be good for his mental health. So despite my best efforts, I became yet another person who let him down, lied to him and abandoned him. I know the chances of him ever seeing this are non-existent, but I'm sorry, little dude. I'm really, really sorry. You handled the situation as well as you could have at the time. Keep in mind that you've probably helped lots of other people in their lives, at least while they were with you. Thank you for doing your best. Thanks. I know I've helped a lot of kids, and I try to keep that in mind. It's still hard. This was difficult to write, it's been years and this still gets me. That sweet boy deserved better. I think it bears mentioning that I'm no longer a foster parent. Eventually I reported my caseworker for refusing to provide respite, telling me to ask my rich mommy for help, etc. The only thing that came of that is she retaliated by removing all my kids, and revoking my ability to be a foster parent. There was no fighting that, absolutely nothing I could do. Last I heard they gave her an award for outstanding service. I have little good to say of the Portland foster system. I have contact with some of my kids though. My oldest permanent placement, Jay, recently graduated high school. I couldn't be more proud of him. I also feel old.